I watched him die, a death without a goodbye, without a final touch, without a single word of comfort. And today, I saw him again, standing right in front of me, alive, vivid, full of life. My entire world turned upside down. The grief I had carried was no longer the pain of losing someone forever. It became confusion, a deep, unsettling disorientation I could not make sense of. For months, I had lived like a shadow. The house we once shared now empty of him, but still overflowing with memories, the pillow he used, the coat he left by the door, the cups he drank from every morning. Everything remained the same except for him. My husband Thomas had died in a car accident, and yet here I was, standing in the middle of a grocery store staring at him. Not a fading image from memory, but him, real, present, standing among shelves filled with food. My hand trembled. A jar of tomato sauce slipped from my grip and shattered on the floor, red spreading across the tiles like blood, like a stain that could never be erased. I couldn't think. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from a confusion so intense it became its own kind of terror. I turned, my breath caught in my throat, and there he was, Thomas, standing there with a shopping basket in hand, his eyes focused on the labels as if nothing had ever happened, as if everything was normal. He looked exactly the same, every line on his face unchanged, even the faint smile I remembered from the last moment I saw him before he was gone forever. Then he turned toward me, and his eyes were no longer familiar. He looked at me as if I were a stranger. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else," he said, his voice calm, clear, and in that instant, the world seemed to stop. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. I had stood beside him for 41 years, and now he was telling me I was mistaken. Everything inside me went hollow. He stood there, not recognizing me, and I didn't know what to do. It felt like something inside me had shattered completely. I stepped closer, my voice stuck in my throat, barely more than a whisper that struggled to exist. "No, Thomas, it's me, Eleanor." I said it, but he only looked at me with unfamiliar eyes, as if all the years we had shared, all the love we had built, meant nothing at all. He took a step back, as if trying to distance himself from me. A man I had loved, a man I had once been married to, now walking away as if I had never existed. I couldn't accept it. I simply couldn't. He could not have forgotten me. "Are you okay?" someone nearby asked when they saw me frozen in place, but I couldn't answer. I couldn't say a word. I just kept staring at him, my heart racing, my breath shallow. He stood there, not recognizing me. Something so strange I could not comprehend. And then, in a single moment, he left, and I stood there watching him go. My eyes caught sight of an old car, not the one he used to love, not the one he carefully maintained every weekend. I couldn't hold myself back. A decision flashed through my mind. I had to follow him. I had to know the truth. If he was truly alive, then who was the man I had buried? Outside, a light breeze passed by as I got into my car and followed him without hesitation, keeping just enough distance so I wouldn't be noticed. We drove through streets I knew so well. Then he turned into a neighborhood I had never seen before. Low houses, narrow roads. He stopped in front of a pale blue house with a white wooden fence. A woman I didn't know came out to greet him at the door. She smiled and kissed his cheek like a wife greeting her husband. And then two children ran out from inside, wrapping their arms around him and calling out, "Grandpa." My world collapsed in that moment. This was not my home, not my family, and yet I sat there in my car, feeling like a stranger watching my own life being taken, replaced, violated. I couldn't believe my eyes. He wasn't dead. He had never been dead. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of the house, the car, the children, memorizing every detail because that is what a wife does. She remembers. But now I no longer knew if I was still his wife. I drove away, my mind in chaos, not even sure what I was searching for anymore. Only one question remained. If Thomas is alive, then who was the man I buried? I couldn't believe my eyes. Everything felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. That hollow sensation of standing face to face with someone I believed I had lost forever, now alive right in front of me. There was no way I could be mistaken. He was Thomas, my husband, the man I had buried 6 months ago. And yet the man standing before me was not the one I had loved. He did not recognize me. He did not remember me. The dizziness overwhelmed me. I couldn't stand steady. I staggered as I turned away, rushing out of the supermarket, trying to escape a reality I could not accept, but my legs refused to listen. They kept moving as if something was pulling me back. My lips tightened, my heart pounded violently. This feeling was nothing like the pain of losing him, nothing like the emptiness I felt standing beside his grave. This was something else, the sudden impact of shock, a sensation I could not explain. I made my way home, but everything inside the house felt closed in, suffocating, as if I were living in a world where everything had changed without me realizing it. I sat down on the chair in the living room, staring into the empty space, trying to piece my thoughts together. Everything I thought I knew about Thomas now felt untrue. If he had not died, then why had everything I'd done, everything I went through, become meaningless? I could not accept this truth. The feeling of being deceived, of being betrayed, was a pain beyond words. I needed to know the truth, not because I wanted revenge, but because I could not continue living in darkness, surrounded by lies. If he was alive, then everything I believed, every memory I held onto was nothing but a deception. Just a few hours later, I decided I would no longer stay silent. I would not let this doubt torment me any longer. I had to find answers. I picked up my phone and called Nam, my son, the one I had always trusted, but this time I did not want him to offer comfort or tell me it was all in my imagination. I wanted him to face the truth. "Son, I need you to come here right now," I said firmly. Nam did not respond immediately, but I heard him sigh. "Mom, is this about Dad again?" I did not answer right away. I looked out the window where the last rays of sunlight touched the ground, leaving behind a cold and desolate feeling. I knew what my son was thinking. He would tell me I was imagining things, that I was being consumed by grief. But I could not keep living like this. "I saw your father," I said, my voice calm but unwavering. "He's alive, Nam. He didn't die." Silence followed. Nam said nothing for a moment. Only his breathing echoed through the phone. Then he spoke, his voice trembling. "Mom, what are you saying?" "I'm telling the truth. I saw him at the supermarket. I know he didn't die. You need to come here right now." Nam took a deep breath, but he did not argue anymore. "Mom, I'm coming, but don't do anything yet. Everything will be okay." I didn't know if anything would be okay. I couldn't be sure of anything anymore. I only knew I could not continue living in doubt and fear. I needed the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Nam arrived at my house not long after. I saw him standing at the door, his face tense, his eyes red. He didn't knock. He walked in as he always did. He said nothing, just stood there staring at me, as if waiting for me to speak. But I could only hand him the photo I had taken of Thomas, the photo I could not understand why it existed. "Look, this is Dad. Do you see? Don't you recognize him?" I asked, my voice caught in my throat. Nam took the photo and looked at it carefully for a moment. He said nothing, but I could see him thinking. I could see the confusion, the doubt in his eyes. Finally, he looked up at me, but did not answer immediately. "Mom, Dad is dead. We buried him," Nam said, his voice shaking, but he could not meet my eyes. "You can't keep thinking like this. You've been through so much pain, but he really is gone. You have to accept the truth." His words felt like a knife piercing my heart, but I could not accept that. I had to find the truth. I had to free myself from these lies. "You know the truth, don't you?" I looked straight into his eyes, each word gentle but firm. "You knew Dad had been lying to me all these years, didn't you?" Nam said nothing, only silence, his face sinking into the shadows of disappointment and guilt. And in that moment, I knew I was not alone in this fight. The truth had already been exposed, and now only one question remained. What would we do with it? The house was still silent, every corner holding traces of the past, of the days when Thomas was still here, when everything was filled with laughter, warmth, and love. But now everything was different. Everything was empty. I sat there in that space full of memories, unable to escape the truth that had just been revealed before my eyes. I had seen Thomas, the husband I believed had died, but I could no longer call him my husband. The memories of us remained intact in my mind, like vivid images that could never fade. The last time I saw him, he lay in a sealed coffin, his skin cold, completely lifeless. How could I believe that he was alive, that he stood right in front of me as if nothing had ever happened? I didn't know what to do anymore. Everything had suddenly collapsed, and all that remained was a confusion I could not explain. I sat alone, my hands trembling as I held my phone, staring at the photo of Thomas I had taken in the supermarket. He was still my husband, and yet he was not. He had changed. Then who had replaced him? Who was the man I had buried in that cold grave? I asked myself, not only because I wanted to know the truth, but because I needed answers for everything I had gone through over the past 6 months. A strange man standing before me, possibly Thomas, yet completely someone else. I called Nam again. This time he did not refuse, though his face was still filled with doubt. "I don't understand." "Mom," Nam said, his voice low. "I can't believe this. Dad is dead, Mom. You need to accept the truth." His words cut into my heart like a blade, a denial that could not be erased. I could not accept it. If Dad was dead, then who was the man I had just seen in the supermarket? If he's dead, then why is there someone who looks exactly like him? I asked, my voice tightening, unable to suppress the anger rising inside me. "Nam, don't you see? We buried someone who wasn't Dad, and your father is alive, living a new life with someone else, with another family. Do you understand?" Nam fell silent. I could sense the hesitation in his voice. He did not know what to say, what to do, when he himself had been kept in the dark. "I don't know," he said, his voice on the verge of breaking. "I didn't know about this for so long. But I do know one thing. You can't keep going like this." "Do you know?" I let out a bitter laugh. "What do you know? You don't know that your father has been deceiving me our entire life. You don't know that this truth has been hidden right in front of us for 40 years. Nam did not respond. He just looked down, as if trying to avoid me, to avoid the truth I had just exposed. I could not forgive him, nor could I forgive myself for failing to see the deception all this time. But I could not sit there forever in pain. I had to find the truth. "I will find out the truth," I said, my voice cold, leaving no room for weakness or doubt. "I will not let myself live in this lie for another day." The next day, I made a plan to meet that man again. I could not let him continue living in this false life any longer. Nothing was more terrifying than living in a world full of secrets I could not understand. I needed answers. I had to know what he was doing, why he had deceived me, and why he had chosen to kill himself before I could even say goodbye. I prepared carefully for this meeting. I needed to understand everything that had happened, every detail, from what he had done over the years, to the reason he deceived me, to everything he had hidden for so long. And I knew that no matter how painful it would be, I would not back down. Finally, I stood in front of that house again, the house where I had seen him walk in the day before, with the strange woman and the children. I could not keep standing at a distance. I could not let my life, our life, continue to be controlled by this deception. I stepped out of the car, determination filling me, my footsteps echoing clearly along the quiet street. The door opened. The woman, Claudia, stood in front of me, looking at me with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. I said nothing. I simply reached out, holding the papers in my hand and handing them to her. "These are legal documents," I said. "He needs to know that I am his wife." She looked at me, then down at the papers. Her eyes widened as if she could not believe what was happening. She turned to look at the man, and I saw the panic in his eyes. He was no longer my husband. He was no longer Thomas. He was a liar. Everything inside me felt like it was being torn apart, piece by piece. I couldn't explain the chaos in my heart as I faced the man who had once been my entire world, yet now stood before me like a stranger. Why did he do this? Why did he deceive me, deceive our son, and create a false life I knew nothing about? These questions kept drilling into my mind, and I could not stop until I found the answers. I could not continue living in a world where everything I believed in was a lie. The feeling of betrayal did not come only from Thomas, but also from my son, from the people around me, the ones I had trusted completely. If they could deceive me, then what in this life was real? What was left for me to believe in? The next day, I began searching for the truth. I could not let myself drown in doubt and fear any longer. I had to face it, no matter how painful it would be. I went to see a lawyer, someone I hoped could help me find justice, help me tear apart the web of lies Thomas had built. She was a decisive and determined woman, and the moment I told her my story, I knew she was the one I needed. She listened as I told her everything, about what happened at the supermarket, about my encounter with Thomas, about the secrets I had begun to uncover. When I finished, she did not speak right away. She simply remained silent, looking at me with sharp eyes, as if evaluating everything I had said. "This is a complicated case," she finally said, her voice calm, without emotion. "This is not only deception, there are also criminal elements involved. We are talking about faking a death, financial fraud, and identity replacement. I will need solid evidence to prove everything you have told me." I did not hesitate. I wanted the truth, and I was willing to do whatever it took to get it. "I will do everything necessary. I cannot live in this darkness any longer." She nodded. "We need to find documents and evidence to bring this to light. If what you are saying is true, I will help you get justice." After meeting the lawyer, I felt a faint sense of hope. I was no longer alone in this fight. But I knew the road ahead would not be easy. I had to keep searching, had to face secrets I had never imagined. I could not forget the image of Thomas walking into that house with the woman and the children. I could not accept that he had built a new family, a new life without me. Why did he do it? Why didn't he tell me? And why fake his own death and deceive all of us? I decided to continue following him, but this time I would not do it blindly like before. I would do everything with a plan, step by step, until I found the answers. I tracked his every move, paying attention to every detail, from the car he drove to the people he met, everything stored in my mind like pieces of a larger puzzle I was trying to complete. I could not give up. I had to know the truth, no matter what it cost. One morning, I returned to that house. This time, I stayed farther away, watching from a safe distance. I saw the man step out, holding a bag. He looked around, as if checking whether someone was watching him. A strange feeling washed over me, as if he knew I was somewhere nearby, following his every move. But I was not afraid. I had not been afraid since the moment I chose to step out of the shadows of these lies. I was not afraid of the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I only wanted to know, to expose every secret that had been hidden for far too long. I watched him walk to his car, get inside, and drive away. I knew this would not be the last time I faced him. I was ready. Every step he took brought me closer to the answers I needed, and I would not stop until I had them. The truth, no matter how painful, was the only thing left in this world that I could hold on to. All that day, I couldn't think about anything else except that man. The one I once called my husband, the one I believed had died, yet now living under a different name, living a different life, with a different family. In my memories, he was still Thomas, but in reality, he was no longer him. This truth was too cruel, too painful to accept, but I knew I had to face it. I could not keep living in the darkness of doubt. I could not remain silent, knowing that everything I had built over the years was based on a massive lie. I could not let these unanswered questions control my life any longer. I had made a decision. I had to uncover everything. I had to know what he was hiding, and I could not wait anymore. Every passing second felt like a blade cutting deeper into me, the feeling of betrayal growing stronger. I wanted the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The next morning, I drove back to the neighborhood where I had seen him. A vague sense of fear lingered inside me, as if I were stepping into another world, a world where I no longer had control. But no, I would not let that feeling defeat me. I needed to know. I needed to face everything. This time, I did not just stand at a distance and observe. I wanted to get closer. I wanted to uncover everything. I parked my car a short distance away, keeping far enough not to be noticed. I stared at the house, feeling a heavy silence surrounding it. The windows were still. The white walls seemed to hold tightly onto every secret inside. And then I saw him. He stepped out of the house, holding a bag as usual. He was not in a hurry. His steps were slow, but there was something different about him. He no longer carried that confident, strong presence I once knew. There was something in the way he walked, the way he looked, something tired, as if he were hiding something he did not want anyone to know. My eyes never left him. I could not look at him without feeling pain. He did not recognize me. He did not look back, did not know that I was standing there, watching his every step. He got into an old car and drove away without hesitation. But I knew I could not stop here. A powerful urge pushed me forward. I had to keep going. I had to follow him. I could not let him out of my sight. No matter what it took, no matter how far I had to go, I would not stop. I would not let the truth remain hidden any longer. I began to follow him, keeping just enough distance so he would not notice. But my heart was restless. Every time he turned into an unfamiliar street, every time I passed through an unknown intersection, the unease inside me grew stronger. But I kept going. I could not turn back. I could not give up. I'd come too far to stop now. We drove through familiar roads, then into small neighborhoods I had never paid attention to. I began to feel as if I were slipping into another world. Old houses, empty streets. But what shocked me most was when he stopped in a place I had never expected, a small, quiet area with rundown houses. I could not believe he was living here, in a place I would have never imagined for him. He parked in front of an old house, its paint faded with time, its windows dim as if hiding everything within. I stopped my car at a distance, staying in the shadows, watching the house. At that moment, I no longer cared whether I would be discovered or not. I wanted to know everything. That woman, who was she, and those children, who were they? Why was he living with them? He stepped out of the car carrying a bag, then walked inside. A woman stood at the door to greet him. They exchanged a familiar look, like a real family. The sight felt like a slap across my face, as if everything I knew had shattered in an instant. He was no longer my Thomas. He had become someone else, living another life, with another family. And I was left with nothing but pain, lost among the broken pieces of my past. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel tightly, my heart hollow. The images replayed over and over in my mind. The way that woman looked at him, the way he embraced those children, it all confirmed that I had been deceived for so many years. I could not endure it any longer. I took out my phone and decided to capture everything. I did not know what these photos would do for me, but at least they would be proof. I needed evidence. I needed to expose everything that was happening. Those photos would be testimony, proof of every lie I had been forced to endure. At that moment, I knew there was no turning back. I could not give up. I could not continue living in this deception. I would not let Thomas keep living in the shadows of his secrets. I would do whatever it took to expose the truth, no matter the cost. Each passing day, the questions inside me only grew stronger. I could not accept that Thomas, the man I had loved my entire life, was now living a completely different life. He had not only deceived me, but also deceived himself, deceived all of us. And so the biggest question still remained. Why? Why did he fake his death? Why did he make me and everyone around us believe that he was gone forever? That question kept circling in my mind, leaving me unable to rest, unable to continue living in the darkness of doubt. Decided I had to find the truth. I could not keep living in this chaos any longer. I began searching for everything related to Thomas, every clue I could possibly find. It was time to stop sitting still, to stop waiting in silence. I had to face it, and I needed a plan. The lawyer I had helped me gather evidence. She was the only person I felt I could trust at that moment. After listening to my story, she advised me to collect as much information as possible. We need clear evidence for everything. If we can prove that the death was faked, everything will become much easier, she said. I did not hesitate. I had to act amid or time to delay. I continued following Thomas, searching for more evidence that could expose the secrets he was hiding. I felt like a detective, tracking every step, every movement of his, not missing even the smallest detail. Every detail could be a crucial piece in the puzzle I was trying to complete. One morning, I returned to the neighborhood where he lived, like a shadow. I saw him again, and this time he was not alone. The woman was with him, the same woman I had seen standing at his door the day before. She smiled at him, not like a friend, but like someone in love. The look they exchanged froze me in place. How could this be? I could not understand it. I followed them quietly, keeping a safe distance so I would not be noticed. They a place I used to visit with Thomas when we were newly married. Old memories flooded back, but this time, I was no longer the loving wife by his side. I was just an outsider, someone searching for answers. I could not give up. I could not stop. I had to find everything. I continued watching them from afar. They sat at a table near the window, talking comfortably, as if together for a long time. Their conversations were not rushed, not filled with lies. I could see it clearly. They loved each other. They lived in a separate world that I could not enter. And I was nothing more than a stranger in my own life. Unable to bear it any longer, I returned to my car, feeling as though everything around me was spinning. I no longer knew pain had grown too great, too overwhelming, but I knew I had to continue. I could not let this betrayal defeat me. I could not let them continue living in the falsehood they had created. Right after that, I decided to learn more about Thomas's life. I called the lawyer and asked her to help me gather information. I needed proof Lie deceived me, but had deceived his entire life. She agreed and promised to help. A week later, I received a call from the lawyer. She had important news. We have found information about Thomas's bank accounts, about transactions he made after HO come here to review the documents, she said. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Everything was beginning to unfold. I was closer to the truth than ever before. For the first time in months, I felt a faint sense of hope. The long days filled with pain, the sleepless nights, finally seemed to be leading toward an ending. I drove to the lawyer's G. Every step I took brought me closer to the truth. I did not know what that truth would bring, but I was ready to face it. I could not live in this lie for another day. At the lawyer's office, she handed me a thick file. She said nothing, simply let me read. I opened the documents, page after page. We had found evidence of the accounts Thomas opened after he had died out under a false name. Every line on those pages felt like a slap across my face. A clear confirmation that Thomas had not only deceived me, but everyone around him. My eyes could not leave those documents. Every number, every letter hurt me, but at the same time, they brought a strange sense of release. At last, I had the evidence I needed to expose everything he had done. The feeling was so freeing. I no longer had to live in the dark. I was ready to face the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The documents in my hands felt like a sharp blade, cutting through every bond I had spent decades building. Holding them, I felt a pain beyond words. What I read on those pages was not just numbers, bank accounts, or forged signatures. It was an entire life built on deception. It was my years, our years, erased in the most ruthless way. I sat silently in the lawyer's office, my eyes fixed on the documents, my heart heavy with sorrow. It felt as if everything inside me had suddenly fallen into an abyss beyond recovery. Thomas, the man I had loved, the man I had trusted, turned out to be a traitor, not only betraying me, but also betraying his family and his closest friends. He had lived a secret life I had never known. Everything I believed to be true was now nothing but lies. "What do you want to do next?" the lawyer asked, her voice calm, untouched by surprise. She had heard too many stories like this, but for me, this was the first time I was facing such a truth. I could not believe that the man I had devoted my entire life to loving could do something so cruel. I did not answer right away. I sat there, trying to steady myself. Everything inside me felt swept away, impossible to hold on to. The feeling of betrayal, of deception, how could it ever be fully described? I thought back to the days with Thomas, the tender moments we had shared. Those memories now felt distant, like a life that was never mine. What had he done to me, to the love we had shared all those years? I let out a slow breath, releasing the documents from my hands, and looked up. "I have to see him," I said firmly, even as confusion filled me. "I need to know how he explains this. I cannot live without an answer." The lawyer nodded, understanding my decision. "You can meet him, but remember, he will not tell the truth easily. He will deceive you again. He will try to cover everything he has done." I did not care. I was no longer afraid, whether it was a harsh truth or another lie. I had endured too much already. Now I only needed the truth. Whatever the cost, I would accept it, as long as I could face myself, face what had happened. I drove to the neighborhood where I had seen Thomas, where he was living with another woman and children I had never met. A sense of anxiety and confusion filled me, as if I were stepping into a world where I no longer belonged. But I had to do this. I could not turn back, could not keep living in the darkness of secrets. When I arrived in front of the house, I stopped, unable to step forward right away. Everything around me felt distant, unreal. This was not the home I had imagined, not the place where Thomas and I would grow old together. It belonged to another family, another life he had built without me. I looked toward the window, trying to see him, but there was only darkness. Then I saw him step outside, as if nothing had changed. He did not look at me, did not recognize me. I felt like a stranger in my own life. I called his name, but he only turned and looked at me coldly, as if I meant nothing to him. There was no emotion in his eyes, and I was nothing. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice flat, without a trace of surprise. He did not recognize me. There was no confusion, no shock in his words, and that only made the pain worse. "Don't you recognize me?" I asked, my voice trembling, trying to stay calm. "We lived together for so many years. How can you not recognize your own wife?" He looked at me for a long moment, then replied, "You're mistaken. I don't know who you are." Those words struck me like a violent blow. He did not know who I was. Everything shattered. The memories of a family, of a love I believed would last a lifetime, now reduced to nothing more than a tangled mess of lies and betrayal. I could not stand there any longer, could not allow myself to be hurt again. But I could not give up. "You can't run from the truth forever, Thomas," I said, my voice firmer than ever. "You deceived me, and now you will have to face everything you've done." He looked at me for a moment, said nothing, then turned his back and walked into the house, leaving me standing there, holding the documents. My heart shattered, but I could not stop. I could not, because I had come too far. The silence after my encounter with Thomas echoed in my mind like an explosion. His words were like stones thrown violently against the wall of love and trust I had built over so many years. He did not recognize me, did not acknowledge any connection between us. Everything I had believed in, every memory I had held onto for so long, now lay shattered on the ground. The feeling of being deceived, of being erased from my own life, was so painful that I did not know what to do next. But one thing I knew for certain was that I could not let this betrayal continue to weaken me. I could not allow these lies to crush me any further. I had spent my entire life loving a man who now could not even recognize me, and it made me feel like someone forgotten, someone abandoned. But I could not keep living in that pain. I had to stand up, I had to face the truth and save myself. Nam, my son, already knew, and I could see that he was deeply confused. He could not accept the truth. But I could not remain still, could not keep living in this pain. I had to face him, to confront not only the betrayal from my husband, but also from the very son I had given birth to. A part of me wanted to give up, to forget everything, but another part of me was screaming for justice. The next day, I called Nam. My voice was firm, no longer the voice of a weak mother. "You need to come see me." "We need to talk," I said, cold but determined. Nam came to my house that afternoon. He said nothing, just walked in quietly. His eyes were filled with confusion, as if he did not know how to face me. I looked at my son and felt a deep ache. He knew the truth, yet he refused to face it. "Mom, I know you're in pain," Nam said, his voice trembling slightly. "But what you're doing isn't helping. You're stuck in sadness, in anger, but I think you need to let this go." I looked at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. "You think everything can just be let go that easily? You think I can forget this betrayal? You don't understand what I'm feeling. Your father deceived both of us. He faked his death and left us behind. And you helped him deceive me. You can't just stand there and tell me to forget everything." Nam said nothing, lowering his head. My words cut into him like a blade, but I could not stop. I could not keep living in the shadow of these lies. I had endured enough. "What am I supposed to do now?" Nam asked, his eyes filled with confusion and pain. "You can't keep living in this hatred. You have to move on. You have to keep living." "You don't understand," I replied, my voice lower now, heavy with exhaustion. "This truth is too painful, but I cannot move on without facing it. I have to know everything. I have to expose everything your father has done. I cannot let him live without consequences." He fell silent, no longer arguing. He knew I had gone too far to turn back. But I also realized that the truth was not just something I needed to uncover. It was the only way I could keep living, keep fighting, keep finding myself again. After that conversation with Nam, the pain inside me eased slightly, but it did not disappear. Sometimes facing the truth is far more difficult than living in a lie, but I knew I could not remain trapped in that darkness. I had to stand up. The next day, I decided to find the woman Thomas had been living with, Claudia. She was the last person I wanted to see, but I could not avoid it any longer. I needed to face her, to know what she knew and what role she had played in everything that had happened. I went to her house. This time, I felt no fear, no hesitation. I had decided not to hold back any emotion. I would face everything, whether it was pain, betrayal, or anger. The door opened. Claudia stood in front of me, looking at me with cold eyes but without fear. She knew why I was there. She knew that I knew everything. "I am Thomas's wife," I said, my voice firm, "and I want to know if you knew anything about what he has done." She did not answer immediately, just stood there looking at me. But I did not wait any longer. I needed the truth. I needed to know why she had taken part in this deception. Finally, she spoke, but only one sentence. "He lied to all of us." Her words struck me like a shock. She knew everything, yet she had remained silent and accepted it. I could not understand it, but I did not need any more explanations. I had heard enough. What I needed now was to face Thomas and to face myself. I had come too far to stop. Every step I took now was no longer about running from the pain, but about facing the truth, no matter how cruel it might be. The emotions tearing me apart were no longer fear or doubt. They were anger, and a determination to find justice for myself and for the years I had devoted to someone who did not deserve it. Thomas, the man I had once loved with all my heart, was now nothing more than a deceiver, not only to me, but to everyone around him. This fight, I was determined not only to uncover the truth, but to make everything clear. I could not allow these lies to continue shaping my life. I was not weak. I was not someone who would bow my head and accept this. I was a woman who had been deceived, and now I would fight to take back what was mine. After all the ink silences, I realized that the truth is never easy to face. It is like a deep wound. The more you touch it, the more it hurts. But that does not mean I will give up. I have come too far to turn back, and I cannot stop until I reclaim the justice I deserve. I called my lawyer and told her everything I had in my hands, the crucial documents, bank accounts, suspicious transactions, and undeniable evidence of the deception Thomas had created. Now, I needed to take the decisive step. "We are not going to delay any longer," I said to my lawyer, without hesitation. "I do not want to spend another day living in this darkness. He has to pay." She understood and began taking the necessary steps to bring Thomas to justice. Him again was unavoidable. This time, I was not going to seek forgiveness or try to save anything. I was going to end it all, to put an end to the false life he had built. I drove to the neighborhood where I knew he was living. My heart was full of emotion, but it was not tie-in. I knew this would not be easy, but I had no other choice. I had to face the truth. I had to face him. This time, I was no longer afraid. I stood in front of that house where he and that woman were living. There were no tiered resolve. I rang the doorbell, and the door opened. Claudia stood in front of me, her expression cold, as if she had expected me. There was no surprise, no fear. She looked at me for a long moment, then remained silent. "I want to see Thomas," I said, my voice unwavering. "And I want him to answer for everything he has done." Claudia said nothing. She simply me in. This house was no longer the place I had once imagined we would spend our lives in. Everything in that nothing belonged to me anymore. I did not recognize anything. Thomas walked out from inside, his face completely emotionless. His eyes were cold, no warmth, nothing left of the man I had once loved. He looked at me for a long moment, then spoke in "EU here?" I looked straight into his eyes without fear, without hesitation. "I came to face you. I came to make you answer for what you've done. Did you think I would just let this go?" Thomas did not respond a mere in silence, like a statue. But I knew he could not keep avoiding this. I was no longer the woman he could deceive. "You deceived me," I said firmly. "You lived a false life, fool. Did you think I would never find out? Did you think I would keep living in this lie forever?" He looked at me for a moment, then finally spoke. "I did not decide was necessary, and you do not understand." His voice felt unfamiliar, as if he was no longer the man I once loved. Those words, that look, made me feel like a stranger in my own L, the one who does not understand Thomas. I replied, my voice no longer trembling. "You do not understand that what you have done has not only destroyed my life, but everything we built together. You cannot take away my dignity and my freedom and expect me to stay silent." He stood there, motionless, as if realizing there was nothing left to say. That silence felt like a confession. I knew that no matter what he might say, the truth was already clear. He had deceived me, forced me to live in lies for years, and now I would not let him continue. "You have done," I said, without a trace of doubt. "I will not let you keep living in this lie. I will do whatever it takes to bring you to justice." The silence filled the room once again, but I no longer needed his words, because I knew this time I had done the right thing. My fight had begun, and everything was brought into the light. I stood in the middle of everything that had happened, looking back at what I had gone through, what I had lost, and what I had reclaimed. Every step in this fight brought me closer to the truth, but also led me into emptiness I could not immediately fill. The pain, the betrayal, everything I had faced over this time had led me to a path with no return. Everything I once believed in had collapsed. But one thing I knew for certain, I was no longer the weak woman my deceitful husband had thought I was. I had fought for myself, and I would not let this pain defeat me. Ints were presented. As the investigations continued uncovering more evidence, I knew nothing would end peacefully. But I was prepared for that. I was not seeking revenge. I only wanted justice. I only wanted to reclaim my life, no matter the cost. Thomas and Lucas, the two people I had loved the most, the two I had trusted above all else, had not only betrayed me, but forced me into a battle with myself. With the help of e-Investigator, the evidence of fake accounts, illegal transactions, and the double life Thomas had built was brought before the court. Every detail, every piece of truth was slowly revealed. But there was one thing I could never prepare for: the pain of facing my own son. Lucas, the child I had raised and loved, was no longer just an outsider, but someone involved, someone who had known everything and remained silent, someone who had enabled his father's actions. I did not know where to begin when I saw Blas everything that had happened. I did not know if I could look at him the same way, but I knew I had to meet him, had to speak clearly. I could not remain silent as if everything were fine. The emotions of a mother could not simply be hidden. I had to face my son, not as a mother trying to protect him, but as a woman fighting to reclaim justice for herself. One afternoon, as the sunlight faded, I called Lucas. This myself to waver did not allow myself to be weak. "You need to come here," I said, my voice firm. "We need to talk." Lucas arrived shortly after, as if he already knew I had something to say. He is ed in, waiting for me to speak. His eyes were red, as if he had been crying, but he said nothing. He stood there silently. I looked into his eyes and realized I could no longer carry this anger. "Lucas," I began, my voice gentle but firm, "I cannot forgive what your father has done. But what her you knew the truth and said nothing. You chose to deceive me, and I cannot live with that." Lucas looked up at me, no longer surprised or defensive like before. He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You only did what Dad told me. He said if you knew the truth, everything would fall apart. You wouldn't be able to handle it. I just wanted you to be happy." I never expected those words. He had done everything to protect his father, even when it was wrong. "You think I was happy?" I lived in pain for didn't tell me the truth. I wasn't happy. I was living in a lie. Lucas looked at me, guilt filling his face. I could see my words breaking him, but I could not step back. "I cannot forgive your father, and I cannot forgive you. Blame justice for myself and for everything he has done." Lucas said nothing more. He stood there in silence, his eyes red, as if my words had pierced his heart. And in that moment, I knew I no longer had anything to fear. I had spoken the true D, no matter how much it hurt. I was still standing. The next day, I began contacting the authorities, providing all the necessary documents and evidence to bring Thomas to court. I was not doing this for revenge. I was doing it to reclaim what I had lost, to once again. I could not allow this betrayal to control my life for even another moment. And then, in that moment, I realized something important. Sometimes forgiveness does not come from acceptance, but from facing the truth and finding yourself again. And I knew that no matter what price Thomas or Lucas would have Unger be the woman I once was. I would be the one who decides her own life, and I would not let anyone or anything bring me down. In the end, I was no longer Thomas's wife, nor the mother of Lucas as I once knew myself to be. I was a strong woman, rising from the ruins, no longer weak, no longer afraid. I chose to move forward to reclaim my life. and that was my final choice. My journey has not been easy, but every step has been a part of the truth I had to face. I exposed the lies, faced the pain, and in the end, I found my way back to taking control of my own life. We cannot live forever in deception. No matter how painful, no matter how difficult it may be, the truth is always the strongest thing that allows us to stand firm. And sometimes, it is through pain that we discover our true strength. If you are facing secrets, lies, or betrayal, do not let them destroy you. Face them, find your strength, and take back control of your life. Do not be afraid, because the truth, no matter how painful, always leads to freedom. If this story touched your heart, do not hesitate to share it. Let others know that anyone can rise, find the truth, and step out of the darkness of deception. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to follow more stories. Together we grow stronger every day.